Hello, everyone. Hope you're good. Hope you're well. It's Alpa Pandya here, and I am super excited today to bring to you in conversation with a man who really lives to his word, really is a humble, great man, and you can tell his characteristics have come from an even greater man. He goes by the name of Brian Proctor. Now, you may have heard the surname Proctor before, but you may not know who Brian Proctor really is. And it's my honor, it's my privilege, really grateful to have Brian Proctor on today with myself, who's going to be talking about his book, My Father Knew the Secret. So, Brian Proctor is the son of Bob Proctor. Brian, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm really honored to be speaking with you today.
Thank you, Alpa. I'm glad to be here. It's nice to be talking with you.
And you know what? I don't want to call this an interview because I think it sounds too formal. I see this as a conversation, and I see it as a conversation with a legend's son and the son who is the master of the legend's teachings.
I like that.
Yeah, I think that's quite fitting. So the legend that we're talking about here is, of course, one of the greatest teachers we've had, and that is Bob Proctor, whom I admire and respect, and have had the privilege of meeting, working, and of course engaging with several times as a student of his profound teachings and a consultant within his organization. And it all started off in 2014 for me. But I know that you've recently written a book, and here it is. I'm so happy that I actually got it today, the physical copy.
Oh, good.
It was delivered so today, so this is great. Um, and this book is called My Father Knew the Secret. And all I can say is, wow, that he sure did. And this is your absolutely astonishing, well-versed book about your great dad, Bob Proctor. Why do you think, Brian, that your father knew the secret and lived it so diligently right up until his last days?
Well, I think really it comes down to study. When I think about my father and what he did, he was a true studier of self-development material. I mean, he was given the book Think and Grow Rich in 1961, and that's the same year I was born. So, I mean, I was there for his entire journey, and that book he studied every day, along with many other books, of course. And he really started getting into all kinds of different books in the latter years of his life. But um, I was doing an interview. It was a couple of weeks ago. I was up in Toronto, and I was doing an interview with a fellow over um, in Copenhagen. And I asked Linda. I was staying at my father's house, and his wife Linda. I asked Linda. I said, "Linda, can I get Dad's Think and Grow Rich book, just for this interview?" And she said, "Sure, of course." And she went and got it for me. And I held that book, and I could feel my father. I mean, it was incredible. And I know anybody that knows Bob Proctor has probably seen pictures of him holding that book, the Think and Grow Rich book. And Alpa, that thing was held together with a great big rubber band. And when I took the rubber band off and opened it up, it was literally falling apart. And
Wow.
over the years, he's had many people try to give him a new Think and Grow Rich book. He's had people try to get the one that he's had rebound. He wouldn't have anything to do with it because this was his, I don't know, this was his connection into the world of self-development. And that book was in tatters and falling apart because he studied it every day. And
Yeah.
I think why my father was who he was because he studied every day. He never thought he knew it all. And right up to the day before he left, that he passed away, he was still studying. It was never. It was just always. It was a part of him, and I think that's why he became so effective. He never stopped studying. He never thought he knew it all.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. That is actually one of my questions, but you've answered it. But I'm sure it's a question that you've been asked several times. But knowing that you are the Bob Proctor's son, what does that actually mean to you, if that can be defined in feelings?
In feelings, boy, I've never been asked that way before. I get asked a lot. I like that. So in feelings, I realize how lucky I am. You know, I consider myself living a charmed life, and I know a big part of that is because my father was Bob Proctor. Um, to me, he's always just been dad. You know, I mean, he's my father, and you know, I know how fortunate I am. We had a very special relationship. We weren't just father and son. We were like best friends. We were business partners. We talked multiple times a day. You know, often 5 o'clock in the morning. We're both morning people. And so we talked before anybody else was up. And, you know, we would be sharing great ideas and just, you know, talking about life. So for me, really, he was dad. And you know, when I wrote this book, I wrote it because I wanted to share with the world who he was as a father. Um, because I do realize he's not like most fathers. He was kind of unique and special that way. But he was still a father, and you know, he tried to teach me everything he learned throughout my life, right from when I was a young child. And that's part of why I put this book together, because I thought, what a great way to share a different side of Bob Proctor with the world than through the eyes of his son, and sharing all the secrets that he taught me and the lessons over my lifetime that I've been able to apply. You know, I'm living Alpa a great life. My wife Corey and I live in a beautiful home. We're on the water. We have a great life, and we have it because we have been able to practice and use all the lessons and secrets that my father taught me. You know, nothing was ever given to me. I had to go out and earn it, and I think that's a good thing. And it's I don't know. That was kind of a ramble of an answer for you, but
No, there's a few things that have come up with for me there. I mean, he's taught you well. He's taught all those people that he has been in touch with well. He's definitely taught you really well. But what I want to say is that I felt what you said, and you know, many of us feel Bob's presence, especially those that knew him. And I feel Bob around me all the time, and I often ask myself when I'm going through like terror barriers, you know, situations where I'm scared to take the leap, you know, how would Bob handle this situation? How would Bob answer this? Because that's what he taught us to do, right? When we're ever in a situation where things are not going our way, how would, you know, so and so deal with this? Do you feel Bob around you? And do you ask him for guidance when things are not going the way that you'd like?
all the time, all the time. That's the simple answer. I, you know, when you talk about feelings, so for me, when I feel my father, I just feel an absolute envelopment of love. My father was very loving, and he always showed me that. And one of the things, Alpa, that he really drove home with me over the last few weeks of his life was to keep talking to him, keep speaking to him. And I will hear him. And I will hear him in my intuition, in an inner knowing, whatever, you know, whatever that may be. So yes, I always feel my father. I have a couple of places. My wife, she chuckles. She knows when I'm going to speak to dad. I've got two places in the house that I go to when I really want to have a conversation, I guess, for lack of better words. One is a specific chair that we have in our bedroom that looks out over the ocean. This chair, my father loved this chair. He sat in it, and he immediately ordered one for his house. He was so comfortable in it. So we call it Dad's chair. So that's one place I go. And the other place, as silly as it is the hot tub. I sit in the hot tub and I just feel the warmth, and I close my eyes, and I still talk to him. And you know, whether you believe that or not doesn't really matter. But you know, I feel him. I feel his presence, and it's a good thing.
Yeah, I definitely believe it. I definitely believe it. I probably don't feel his presence as much as you do, but I definitely know that he's around, and I know he's here right now somewhere. Um, and I'm sure you'd agree with me that Bob never, you touched on this earlier, but he never claimed to know it all. He was always learning, as you said, he was always studying. What would you say to those people who think that, you know, they know everything that there is to know about personal development? and they can do it all on their own. What would your message be to those people?
My message would be to shake them up, because there is no way we can know it all. We're always learning, and especially in personal development, there is always bigger things that we can attain, other things that we can do, and to claim that we know it all. I look at the dad, and I think he knew he never knew it all. He knew a lot. He definitely knew more than most people, but he was never so confident that he knew it all. There was always things to learn. And I think if you are a true student of personal development, you'll know you never have it all, because there is so much to learn. And I look at my own situation. I've been to thousands and thousands of his live seminars, and you hear his message. It's often the similar message, but every time I was there, I heard it in a different way, because I was a different person, and I took it in a different way, and I applied it in a different way, even though it was similar message. And that is because we are always evolving and changing, so there's no way we can know it all. So my message to anybody that thinks they do is, give your head a little bit of a shake, and just start opening yourself. You're obviously not chasing after big enough dreams, because if you chase after big enough dreams, you won't know how to achieve it. You won't know how to get there. So you need to learn, you need to study more, and you need to step out and do the things that you have never done before. And you can only do that by growth.
Yeah, absolutely. Were you, Brian, expected to have it all sorted just because you're Bob Proctor's son? Were you expected to kind of, get all this universal law thing sorted and understand personal development? And just because you probably had, well, you did, not probably, you had first-hand experience of
Mhm.
teaching. So what's your answer there?
Yeah, I think outsiders for sure expected I would just know it all. But there's certain family members, even though everybody's close to dad, not all of the family members studied the material. um it's dad can't force anybody to learn it. Now I did, but he never forced any of us. I have a brother and a sister, and there's lots of grandkids and everything else. He never forced anybody to learn the material. It was always just if they wanted to. And I had a natural kind of way that I was drawn to it. So I know I did. And again, I certainly don't know it all. But yes, there was always an expectation. Hey, you're one of Bob's kids. You gotta, and just because we were one of his kids didn't mean we knew it all. We had to want to apply and learn the message.
I think that's the key, isn't it? If you're not willing to do the work, then you're not going to see the results. But what would you say has been some of your biggest achievements through applying your dad's teachings?
Really, my biggest achievements. Well, it's certainly in attaining big goals. I've attained a lot of really big things that are a direct result of what I learned from dad and some of the lessons that I learned from him. Um, in business, I did some pretty amazing things. And again, it was all because of what I learned from dad. Like if I was to look at business, I started email marketing back in 2000. And that was in a period of time when email marketing was not a thing. There was no list servers and all the stuff that there is today. I had to figure it out and do it all from my computer. There was no programs at that time.
Yeah.
So I stepped out and really started to figure it out, because I knew there was something there. And I became one of the top affiliate marketers in the world. I was in many launches. I always took first place, brought in millions of dollars of commissions through online marketing, things like that. So you know that homes, cars, whatever, relationships, all kinds of different things, it all came into my life. They're all big accomplishments, but they are all because of what I learned from my father.
Yeah.
And, I have no bones about it. It's not because of anything else. He was always there to support me. He never did anything for me, but he always supported me. And he taught me mindset. And mindset is everything. If you want to achieve big things, you've got to have right mindset. I often say, would you be friends with somebody that talked to you the way you talk to yourself?
Yeah.
It's so many people berate themselves internally, mentally. And dad always taught me that you got to make sure you're focused on what you want, the good that you want, and you don't allow negative thinking. And it's all a mindset. And you've got to give thought to the way you're thinking and the way you talk to yourself. And if you can get that in the right place, Alpa, you'll be able to achieve so many great things.
Bob always used to say, didn't he, success is 95% mindset, 5% strategy. And I would agree with him. It's so true. You've got to get the mindset straight. If you were to sum up the best message or one of the greatest messages that Bob has taught you, that you've learned from him, what would that message be?
Ooh, well, I can think of two really good ones off the bat. The first one, he had a statement that I used to love when he said in seminars. He said, you can't change the time you got out of bed this morning. And, whatever time you got out of bed, that's the time you got out of bed. What's happened in the past has happened in the past. Don't let it dictate how you're going to live your life. We can't change it. We can forgive it. We can let it go. We can't change it. And the big lesson is we need to live in the present moment. He always said, if you live in the past, you're not living in the moment and you're not doing anything for your moment. If you're living in the future, you can create anxiety and all kinds of stuff because you're dreaming up stuff that, good or bad, of where things can go. But if you're focused on the moment, and if you're focused on being the best version of you at this exact moment and doing everything you can in your power at this moment, your life will be unbelievable and you will achieve great things because you're living in the moment and you're doing what you can right now. That would be the first thing. That's a really, some people will gloss over that, but that's a really important lesson. The other thing would be what he liked to call the impression of increase. And he taught me this as a young child. When I was a new kid in school, I was going to be that new kid in the class again. And here's a simple way to apply it, is that everybody you are in front of, put these 4 letters across their head, MMFI. And that means make me feel important. Mm-hmm. If you can make everybody you come in contact with feel important, make them feel seen, make them feel better because they came in contact with you today, you will get on in this world in a really good way. So many people you get in conversations and they're just all talking about themselves. And it's like, oh God, you want to get away from there. But people that ask you interesting questions, take an interest in you, pay you a sincere compliment, boy, you want to be around those people. So if you can leave everybody you come in contact with feeling better because they came in contact with you that day, that's another powerful lesson that will get you on. People will want to work with you. They'll want to deal with you. They'll want to help you if you are of that way. And that's a power. You can change the course of somebody's day and sometimes the course of their life just because of your interaction with them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of power in that.
Yeah, I love that. It's people remember how you made them feel, isn't it, rather than anything else. They always remember how you made them feel. So I love that. And for me, Brian, reading your book, it got me emotional, quite emotional. I read the first 5 chapters this morning. I got back from the day last night as I was preparing this conversation. And then I went on to chapter 6 and chapter 7. Chapter 6 is about decisions. Chapter 7 is about, like you've just spoken about, impression of increase. And I'm so grateful that this book landed on my desk today. As I said earlier, this physical copy, just to hold it in my hand, because I was waiting for this. And I think that what has really touched me in your book, Brian, is how you really do make an impression of increase. You've just spoken about it, but throughout this book of yours, there is an impression of increase. And I can hear Bob's words through you. And even when we exchanged emails for this conversation to take place, you wrote something in your email which immediately made me think of Bob. And I said to myself, as I was reading your email, that, God, you sound just like Bob. Bob's talking through you, Brian. And you said, I will be all set and ready for whatever you need. How long are you looking for? And I will just follow your lead in the conversation. And that actually reminded me of Bob kindly gave me an hour of his time when he live streamed into one of my seminars back in 2016. And he did a Q&A session with my delegates that were there. And he spoke on self-image. And Bob always knew when to follow, when to lead. And I had a call with him the day before the live streaming was to take place. And he was in his hotel room getting ready for the paradigm shift the next day. And he was asking me if the background was okay, if the lighting in his hotel room was okay for the following day that he was going to do the talking to my seminar. And that's just an example of such a great leader and a follower. Why do you think being a great leader is an important quality to have?
Well, I think, to be a great leader, you also do need to be a great follower. That's something Dad always drove home to me. But leaders are the people that change the world. They're the people that step out and do things that most people don't do. And I think it really, in my opinion, it comes down to setting big goals. I think most people in the world either don't have a goal, or they have a goal that's really not that big that you know how to do. So you're still going to just kind of drift from day to day. But leaders have big goals. They have goals. Dad used to call them C-type goals. And that's a goal where you don't have a clue what you have to do to get there. But you step out and you start taking action every day. And as you take action, you'll find that next step. And he often called it sometimes imperfect action. We can blunder, we can do all kinds of things, but we have something that is driving us, something that we're willing to step out and do the uncomfortable and do whatever is necessary to get there. And that is the sign, in my opinion, of a leader. That's it.
I agree. I agree with you. And I think, again, I think the way you answered my email was just so, like, I just remembered Bob just there and then. And I love the way how in your book, throughout, you've shared some great photos of Bob. You've in his earlier life, you've also shared your childhood photos. You've shared some intimate family photos, and I love the way that you've written this book, because it's just not a book. It's actually helping people to take action. You can take notes, the step-by-step guides that you're giving, there's exercises you're giving. And another thing that really got me really emotional was in chapter 1, the photo of your hand in Bob's hand, which is the saying goodbye chapter. And you can sense the real father-son bond that you spoke about earlier in that photo. And if I may read a sentence from this book, if that's okay.
Sure, yeah.
Say, my father was a man who freely gave and took pride in helping others. He took an interest in everyone he encountered. If you are one of those people who had the chance to meet him, either at an event or online, or maybe it was a phone call, you know what I mean. And yeah, I absolutely know what you mean. He was an absolute giver. He just gave and gave and gave, didn't he? He was just so generous.
I think one of the things that struck me the most after he passed away were the comments. We did an online memorial for him. There was hundreds of thousands of people on for it. And I was reading comments for days, and they just, I was hurting, and those comments just warmed my heart. And the general theme around those comments were how generous he was. And he really was. In Dad's last few years, he was earning a very large sum of money, and he never hoarded it. He was giving it away all the time. He was helping organizations. He was helping people, not just money, but also his time. He would do whatever he could to help people. He always knew that the more you put out, the more that was going to come back to you. And he lived his life that way. He was truly the most generous man I have ever known.
He lived what he taught, didn't he? And very few people can do that. He really, really embodied it and imbued every single way.
He really did. And I think, you talk about that first chapter. That first chapter for me was the hardest to write, for sure. It took me, after he passed away, it took me 2-3 months before I can even start writing again. And that was what I had to write first. And, you know, there's so much value in that, because I get to share. Here's what I love about the book. The book is not about me. The book is really about my father and everything I learned from him. I talk in a conversational style. So, you know, it's easy to read and it's easy to understand the lessons and apply them, which is great. But what you read, especially in that first chapter, is that my father, even at his worst of times, he was in pain. He was not doing well. He still treated everybody around him in such a wonderful way. And that is a testament to the man. You know, he always said a pro is at their best regardless. And Dad was a pro. He was at his best regardless of what was going around him. And he treated everybody with such kindness, no matter what. And there's a lot to that.
I agree. And I remember one of the last consultant online trainings that he did for us. And you couldn't sense that he was in pain, although we found out later that, you know, he wasn't very well. But he was a trooper. He just went going. He wouldn't let you see that, you know, whether it's just for 30 minutes he was coming on or just for 20 minutes, whatever it was, he did what he needed to do. He did his thing. And then he went away, but he would never show that he was in some kind of pain or back pain or whatever was going on with him. And I think that is a sign of a true legend. What's your favorite chapter in My Father Knew the Secret? And if you can read something for us from there, if you've got it there in front of you.
I do have it here. Wow, gosh, what my favorite chapter? I don't know. It would depend on the day, Alpa. It would depend on the day.
What's the day telling you today? What would you pick today?
Well, if I was to pick a chapter, it's the one that gets me most emotional. It is the first chapter. That first chapter for me is just so heartfelt. And I'll be honest with you, it's a hard one for me to read because I do get choked up. But it's, you know, here's something I'll read to you. I'll read one little thing. Listen to your inner voice. This is not necessarily my favorite chapter, but this is a piece of. There's just so much. I'll frame this by the fact that I had been writing this book, Alpa, for almost 4 years. Dad knew I was writing the book. He loved the idea around it. I just, at the seminars, I was always asked, what's it like to have Bob Proctor as a father? And so this book is really my answer to that. And we shared many mornings talking about the different lessons, the different stories. We would reminisce about things that happened, and it really helped. And he always said to me, he said, Brian, take your time with this. Don't rush it. Take your time. And I even wrote in the book, I said, I often feel if he knew he wasn't going to be here when the book came out. The biggest thing was I did not know the title of the book while he was alive. I had several ideas and we both talked about it and none of them felt right. And that's another thing he said. He says, you know, it'll come to you when it's supposed to come to you. And the title of this book, I'll just share this story before I read something, but the title of the book came to me in the middle of the night. I was actually dreaming about Dad. It was after he'd passed away. I was dreaming about him. And at 3 a.m, I woke up with this, My Father Knew the Secret. I thought, you know, the movie The Secret propelled him to another level. And I thought, wow, that's the perfect way to tie it all in. And I think that the title speaks to who he was and what he was about. And he really did know the secret. And, you know, people will ask, well, what is the secret? And I often say, well, the secret is different for me than it might be, you know, even for you, Alpa. But I promise that within these pages, you'll find your secret, what it is that will help you live a better life. Anyway, so I'll just read a little bit. In his final days, when my father so desperately wanted me to understand that he would always be with me, I promised him I understood. And this is kind of what we talked about earlier. He said I should continue to ask him questions as if we were having a conversation, and that to understand the answer, I would need to get into a quiet place and calm my mind, and that in this relaxed state, I would know. I would feel the answer and likely call it my intuition. He told me to allow that to guide me. Now, the reason why this is one of my favorite pieces, I could go on, but I'll end at that, is because so often in life, we listen to that inner voice and we don't do what that inner voice tells us. We have a business decision coming up or a personal decision, and our inner voice is saying, no, we really shouldn't do that. But there's something about it is like, oh, but if, this works out, this is going to be a great thing. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. It usually never works out. If we listen to that inner voice, our intuition, the first voice, the first message that comes into our head, and we follow that, I truly believe we'll live a better life and we'll live a more heart-centered life. And that is probably the very last lesson that Dad taught me, is to listen to that inner voice and let it guide me. And I do that now. I've had a few things over the last, since he passed a year and a half ago, I've had a few things that I listened to that inner voice and I followed it. And a couple of things were life-changing situations that is like, really, should I do this? But my inner voice is saying, yes, I should. And I did. And because I followed that, I promise you, Alpa, I'm living a relaxed and more loving way of life, doing what I truly want to do and spreading the message I want to spread. This book, I'm sure you don't get rich from selling books. So this is, for me, this is not about money. This is about the message. And my heart is so bent on getting this message out to as many people. I know that this book will help so many people because of the message in it, because I know what it's done for me. And as I said, it's not about me. It's really about everything I learned from my father. And he was at the top of his game. He really was. And for those that may be watching or listening that don't know who Bob Proctor is, just a quick little search, you'll start to get an idea. But he's somebody worth listening to because he really lived a good life. He treated people properly. And that's kind of how I'm living now. And so that's, in this long ramble, my last lesson is to listen to that inner voice and follow it. The first message that comes into your head. The other messages that follow that are paradigms and everything trying to scream, oh, I'm not sure if that's right, or should we do this? That's when logic starts playing into the fact. But that first message that comes in is that intuition, that knowing. Listen to that more often.
Yeah, I love the way you've answered that. Couple of more questions before we wrap up.
Sure.
Why, and Bob used to talk about this all the time, and because nothing happens without making a decision, right? We know that, but there's a lot of people out there that don't understand decision making and why that's so important, especially when we're going for our big C type goals. So why is decision making, in your opinion, why is it so important?
Well, decision making is really important because if you're going to get on in the world, you have to make decisions. The procrastinators of the world basically never live a great life because they're always thinking, should I do this? Shouldn't I do that? Well, let me think about it a little longer. And they never do anything. Decision was one of the main chapters in Think and Grow Rich, the book that he studied for 60 years. And he was always of the opinion that we should make decisions quickly and firmly. And if we change them slowly. We don't always make the right decision, for sure. But if we can step into and make a decision and then just start moving forward and acting on it, we will achieve so much more in life. Decision makers are the people that get on in this world. They're the people that achieve big things, and they're the leaders. A leader knows how to make a decision. They just make it and then they carry on towards it. And it doesn't matter what all the people around them have to say. They don't worry about that nonsense. They don't worry about the chatter. They're just zeroed in on where they want to go. So it's very, very important.
And also, I think making a decision from where you are, regardless of whether you've got the money, regardless of whether you've got the resources or whatever it is, because I, for one, have really understood this in the past couple of weeks that, when I made that decision, the money came, it came like magic, right? So I know the real importance of decision making now, and I've witnessed it like on a bigger scale. I've witnessed it before, but now I truly, truly understand it. Um, what's
Well,
your
Alpha,
final?
if sorry, if I can just expand on that just one little touch. And I totally get what you're saying. And I've made many decisions that were financial that I didn't have a clue how I was going to do it. And so many people get held back because I don't have the funds to do this. Well, what I found is that by making the decision and going for it and being excited about it, it drove me to do the things that I would not normally do. It's the action. It's not just thinking about is going to bring it into our life. We have to think about it for sure, but we need to take action. And if you make that decision, you're going to step out and do the things that you're not comfortable doing, that you probably would never normally have done, but that by doing those things, you will bring the money to you that you need because you're stepping out and doing whatever is necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. Great interjection there. Thank you so much. I was just going to say, your final words of wisdom to our viewers and our listeners from you.
So my final words would be, we talked about it in the beginning, is be the best version of you right now. Don't live in the past. Don't live in the future. Live in the present moment. Be the best version of yourself. Treat those around you, especially those closest to you, with love and respect. And do what you can in the moment. Be the best version of you. And that version might be different from day to day. But if you can be the best version of you each day, you're going to live a great life and you will do great things.
I love that. Love that. Some great advice there from you. Where can people get your book from?
Alpa, they can get the book on Amazon. The book is on Amazon, or go to brianproctor.com, and that'll give you Amazon links for all around the world. There'll also be some bonuses there if you go that way, but really easy to get. Go brianproctor.com or go to Amazon. And it's my
Bonuses are
father. Pardon me?
I was going to say the bonuses are worth getting. So go through brianproctor.com because you will get a handful of golden nuggets and videos that Bob has done and some great insights. So go through brianproctor.com. That's your best way, I think.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Brian. Really, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for all these special and great information that you've given to everybody. And it just really means a lot to me that you've spent your time and shared your wisdom and your knowledge with our viewers today.
Well, thanks very much, Alpa. I appreciate you having me here, and it's been great speaking with you.